8:15 a.m. Conference room B. The clock over the door ticking like a metronome for bad decisions. The air felt 12 degrees colder than the hallway. The kind of chill you get from an overworked AC unit and a conversation you already know won't end well. Beige table. Beige walls. Beige corporate art of a bridge going nowhere. Patricia Collins from HR sat to my left with a legal pad lined up perfectly to the edge of the table. Pen uncapped. Empathy rehearsed. To my right, in a quarter zip that probably cost more than my steel toes, was Ashley Wellington, 27, sorority president smile, the CEO's niece. She leaned back like a judge who'd read the verdict before the trial. Tom, thanks for coming, Patricia began, and the cadence of her voice was the same one funeral directors use when they've done this 1,000 times. This is just an informal conversation about some recent team dynamics. Informal, like inviting a man to his own sentencing without the courtesy of a subpoena. I took the seat with my back to the wall, habit from a lifetime of inspections, audits, and the Navy. The table hummed under my fingertips with the faint vibration of the building's air system. I set my coffee down, lit a line toward me, and placed my badge near my right hand the way you set a rook in the corner before you decide whether you're opening with a gambit or a grind. The laminate was warm from the walk over. That warmth felt like the last friendly thing in the room. Ashley had her bright, public smile on. The one you see on consulting websites next to phrases like, unlocking synergies. But her eyes were hard glass. We really appreciate your flexibility, she said, as if I'd been invited to brunch and not a cross-examination. I nodded. Just one. I'd learned long ago that silence is a weapon if you let it sit long enough. People trip over it to reach the conclusion they already want. Patricia glanced at her notes and launched in. We've received concerns about communication patterns that may be contributing to a hostile work environment. There it was. The phrasing that gets careful training slides and mandatory e-signatures, the one that, if it sticks, follows you into every lobby where they offer you a visitor badge and a lukewarm water bottle. Ashley folded her hands and kept the smile, but her thumb rubbed her index finger in small, tight circles. Not nervous. Calculating. Could we talk about specifics? I asked. The room smelled faintly of lemon cleaner and dry erase marker. The AC kicked on and the clock ticked louder, like it was stepping closer. Patricia's smile didn't change shape, but something in it cooled. We'd prefer to keep this conversational, which meant they didn't have much they could risk stating out loud, which meant this wasn't a discussion. It was a frame. Ashley leaned in, elbows on the table, voice dipped half an octave to land somewhere near sincerity. It's not personal, Tom, but the way you correct me in meetings feels aggressive, like you're trying to make me look less than. It makes it hard for me to establish credibility. The word credibility hit a nerve I kept buried under years of maintenance logs and safety audits. I thought about the heat treat furnace at 2:17 a.m., the day the thermocouple drifted and metal memory almost betrayed us. I thought about the names of line workers who trusted me because I'd started where they did, with a face shield and a sore back, not a slide deck and a slogan. Credibility wasn't something you declared. It was something the floor granted you or it didn't. I kept my voice level. Do you have an example? Patricia's pen hovered. Again, we want to avoid adversarial framing. This is about how people feel. There's a thing that happens when you spend years in manufacturing. Words like torque and yield and tolerance sediment in your bones. Feelings matter, but bolts still shear at the wrong spec, and brake calipers still fail at the wrong heat. The building groaned as the air cycled. My coffee had gone bitter. Ashley pursed her lips. It's a pattern. The way you look at me when I share ideas. The energy. Energy. I thought about her first meeting, the 20-minute late entrance, the protein bar crinkling like punctuation. What if efficiency wasn't just a metric but an experience? She'd said, like stopping a car at 70 miles per hour was an improv workshop and not physics. Patricia slid a paper forward but didn't let me touch it. Of course she didn't. Making a colleague feel inferior based on their background or experience level can constitute harassment, she said, and the can was the important part. Elastic enough to stretch across a case file, vague enough to snap back if you pulled too hard. The clock ticked again. 8:17. I traced a finger along the edge of my badge. 2 letters worn smooth from 1,000 swipes. I could feel the seam where the laminate met the plastic. I remembered a chief petty officer telling me, "In a storm, don't shout at the wind. Trim the sails and let the idiot weather show itself." Good advice on the water. Better advice in a beige room with a pre-written script. "Let me be clear," I said, and my voice didn't rise. I learned a long time ago that volume is what you use when you've already lost the argument. I correct inaccuracies that could create risk. That's my job. Ashley exhaled hard through her nose, half laugh, half scoff. Tone matters, Tom. Facts matter more. I didn't say it yet. I let the thought sit in my chest where the knot lived. Right behind the sternum, close to the place where mortgage statements and college savings plans and time's impatience rubbed the nerves raw. Patricia angled her head in the universal HR sign for "Let's de-escalate." "We want to partner on a development plan. Reset expectations. Find ways for you to support new leadership." New leadership. There are phrases that tell you more than they mean to. You file them in the drawer marked intent. The AC clicked off, and for a heartbeat the room was so quiet I could hear the refrigerator in the break room kick on through the wall. I thought about the production floor on the other side of the glass. Presses cycling, forklifts whispering tires across polished concrete. People who knew what a bad batch sounded like before the sensors did. If you stand on that floor long enough, you learn to hear trouble before others smell smoke. I slid my badge a few inches forward so that the edge aligned with a nick in the table's veneer. It looked like a tiny shoreline on a cheap map. I didn't push it further. Not yet. You don't place a piece until you want it noticed. Ashley tilted her chin, smile gone now. "We all want the same thing," she said. "Innovation. Results. A modern culture. Culture doesn't keep a rotor from cracking. Procedures do." I swallowed what I wanted to say and measured out what I would. "Here's what I want," I said, and I let it be simple. Clear standards, safe processes, and evidence when you're making claims about my conduct. Patricia's pen lowered a fraction. She was calculating risk, hers, not mine. "We can schedule follow-ups," she said. "Gather perspectives. Perspectives. Stories shaped by proximity to a last name, not by torque specs and test stamps." 8:19 now. Time isn't generous in rooms like this. It makes you choose who you're going to be. I reached for my coffee, took a sip so cold it bit, and set it down clean. The cup didn't tremble. My hands don't, not when it matters. I looked at the two of them, one learning the power of systems she didn't respect, the other trusting a script to carry her across a chasm. And I did the thing men who keep plants running learn to do when machines shudder. I listened for what was missing. There was no incident number, no dates, no witness statement, no documentation laid on the table. Just the theater of concern and the pressure of hierarchy. You can smell when a case is all perfume and no solvent. "All right," I said softly, and Ashley's eyes flashed like she thought victory had landed. "If you want my cooperation, bring me specifics. Otherwise, we're just trading adjectives." Patricia opened her mouth, closed it, and wrote something on the pad she wouldn't let me see. Ashley leaned back again, arms crossed. The clock clicked over to 8:20. I moved my badge the last inch, laid it flat in the center of the table, squared to the grain like a man placing a chess piece on a marked square. Not resignation, not surrender, but a marker set where it could be seen. Patricia's eyes flicked to it. Ashley's brows knit for the first time since I'd walked in. "No," I said, "because they would misunderstand otherwise. I'm not quitting. I'm here. I'm doing my job. I'm asking you to do yours." The AC kicked back on. Somewhere far down the hall, a forklift horn chirped twice, the polite warning before a turn. I looked at the clock and then at Patricia, and then I met Ashley's glassy stare and didn't blink. The door was closed. The script was ready. The room thought it knew how the scene would play. But outside, mechanisms hum when you feed them the right inputs, and systems, if built right, do what they're designed to do. "Shall we proceed?" Patricia asked, pen poised. "Please," I said, and folded my hands. "Let's put everything on the record." The clock ticked. The AC blew colder. The badge caught the light and threw a small, sharp reflection across the beige. For a second, the room felt like the deck of a ship right before a squall, flat, bright, too calm to be safe. 3 months earlier, the morning felt ordinary. Burnt toast, half-cold coffee, inbox already flashing red, until an email subject line froze me halfway through a sip. New leadership integration. Welcome, Ashley Wellington. That sentence tasted like motor oil. I'd seen enough integration memos to know they usually meant someone upstairs had a new pet project. The message read like a press release from a world that had never known a production floor. Ashley brings fresh perspectives from the consulting sector and will be partnering with Tom Morrison to modernize operations. Partnering, right? Like I needed a 27-year-old consultant who'd never touched an arc welder to teach me how to keep a plant running through 3 recessions, 2 supply chain breakdowns, and 1 global pandemic. Her attached bio was a greatest hits list of buzzwords: disruptive thinker, synergy builder, change catalyst. 2 years at a boutique firm in Columbus. A face that looked airbrushed for leadership brochures. I checked her LinkedIn while my breakfast went solid in my stomach. Everything about it screamed privilege. Private university, internships through family connections, and a smiling portrait framed by perfect hair and light that no factory fluorescent could ever produce. My reply to the company-wide email was 1 word: noted. But inside, I felt the first twist of that old Navy knot, the one that shows up when someone with rank but no experience starts giving orders that can get people hurt. At Hudson Engineering, competence had always meant survival. The machines didn't care about family names. They cared about torque, heat, and precision. 2 days later, Ashley made her grand entrance. She was 20 minutes late to our first team meeting. The room was already buzzing with the low murmur of people who've been told to keep an open mind. She strolled in, sunglasses perched on her head, holding a protein bar that cost more than the gloves we issued welders for a week. "Don't worry, team," she said, dropping into a chair like she owned the air. "Real innovation starts today." Dead silence. Even Martinez, who once laughed when a forklift operator accidentally drove into a wall, didn't make a sound. I should have known then. Silence like that isn't respect. It's the collective instinct of people smelling trouble. Ashley launched her PowerPoint like a performer hitting the stage. Slides full of triangles, arrows, and the word disrupt in fonts that probably had trademark symbols. "This place," she said, pacing, "is running on legacy thinking. We need to disrupt the paradigm." I kept my voice level. "Ashley, we manufacture brake systems for commercial fleets. They don't need paradigms disrupted. They need trucks that stop." She blinked twice, as if I'd spoken in Morse code. "Exactly, Tom. That's the mindset that's holding us back. We need to make efficiency an experience." Someone coughed to hide a laugh. I'd seen this movie before. Fresh MBAs parachuting in to reimagine things they didn't understand. But I'd never seen one with this much confidence and this little comprehension. When the meeting ended, she swept out like a politician leaving a podium. The rest of the team stayed seated, eyes on me. "Do we have to pretend she knows what she's doing?" Rodriguez asked quietly. "For now," I said, closing my notebook. "We keep the line running." That night, while my teenage daughter was finishing homework at the kitchen table, I sat across from her half-reading my mortgage statement. 14 years of loyalty, 8 years left on the loan. The factory had paid for braces, tuition savings, and that roof repair last winter. I couldn't afford to start over somewhere else. Not at 46. So when the next email from Ashley hit my inbox, "Let's brainstorm new ways to make production fun," I took a slow breath and decided I'd play the long game. For 3 weeks, I kept my head down and my reports flawless. Every batch tested at 99.6% yield. Every inspection passed clean. I even fixed the vibration issue in line 3 that corporate hadn't been able to diagnose for months. But Ashley didn't care about results you couldn't post on LinkedIn. She cared about optics. Selfies on the floor wearing a hard hat for exactly 30 seconds before saying, "Oh my God, it's so loud down here." Then came the Slack messages. At first they were harmless, motivational quotes with rocket ship emojis, random pings tagging people for no reason. Then the tone shifted. "Jennifer, you absolutely killed that presentation. Love the energy you bring in those heels. Fire." Sandra, your detail work is amazing. We should brainstorm one-on-one sometime, winking-faced. I felt the temperature in my office drop. I'd seen harassment cases ruin lives, usually the wrong ones. That night, while the plant ran third shift, I created a private folder on my laptop. I named it Q4 Process Reviews, something so boring no one would ever open it. Inside, I started saving everything. Screenshots of inappropriate messages, meeting recordings where Ashley steamrolled veteran engineers, and timestamps of safety procedures she forgot to follow. Not because I wanted revenge. Not yet. Because I'd learned that in both the Navy and corporate America, the only difference between paranoia and preparation is whether you can prove it later. A month in, she started rearranging safety reviews to host what she called innovation sinks. She'd stand at the whiteboard, sketching spirals and circles like a conspiracy theorist with a marker. What if we reimagined brake pads as trust interfaces between humans and machines? She asked one morning. I almost spit my coffee. They're brakes, I said. They stop vehicles. She gave me a look like I'd insulted her ancestors. That kind of linear thinking, Tom, is why this company's stuck in the past. I smiled, the kind of smile you learn when you've survived command inspections. Polite, contained, lethal. That night, I backed up my folder on an external drive and locked it in my bottom desk drawer. My gut told me the storm was forming, and I didn't want to be caught without shelter. 3 weeks later, she proved me right. It happened during a logistics briefing. Ashley proposed rerouting 3 shipments through a construction zone at shift change, a plan that would have delayed delivery and put 2 drivers in real danger. I corrected her calmly with GPS data and accident stats. She went silent. Not embarrassed silent, calculating silent. After the meeting, she cornered me near the vending machines. Tom, she said, stepping too close. Her voice dipped in faux sweetness. When you contradict me in front of the team, it undermines my leadership. It prevents accidents, I said. Her smile thinned. Tone matters. Perception is reality. Facts are still facts, I replied. For a heartbeat, I saw something flicker behind her eyes. Not insecurity, but intent. That was the moment I realized she wasn't just incompetent. She was dangerous, and people like that don't forgive being made to look foolish. The morning after that confrontation, I woke before my alarm. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at a mug that had gone cold an hour earlier. The house was quiet, my daughter still asleep, the neighborhood not yet awake. Through the window, dawn spread across the street like steel catching light. That silence used to comfort me. Not anymore. Now it felt like the moment before an explosion. I'd spent 14 years at Hudson Engineering. Started on the welding floor, learned to run lines, earned my degree at night. Every scar on my hands, every burn on my forearms had bought me 1 inch of respect. And now a kid with a trust fund and a marketing degree was trying to erase it all with buzzwords and HR reports. By 8 a.m., I was in my office. The hum of the factory was steady. Presses pounding rhythm, forklifts whining. It should have been ordinary, but I could feel it. Something under the surface had changed. Rodriguez knocked on my door, closing it behind him. HR's doing check-ins, he said quietly. They asked me if you ever lose your temper. I looked up from my monitor. What did you tell them? The truth. That you barely even raise your voice when everything's on fire. His voice dropped lower. Didn't seem like that's what they wanted to hear. When HR starts fishing for dirt and ignores clean answers, that's when you know they're building a story, not finding facts. 2 hours later, Sandra Martinez, my best quality engineer, lingered after our one-on-one. Tom, she said, eyes darting to the closed door. They asked me if you make Ashley feel uncomfortable. I felt the pulse in my neck throb. Uncomfortable how? They didn't say, just kept repeating words like communication style, tone, hostility. She hesitated. They're not looking for truth, Tom. They're looking for confirmation. She left, and I sat there a long time, staring at the safety posters on the wall. Slogans about teamwork and accountability that suddenly looked like jokes. That evening, I made myself a promise. If they wanted a war, They'd picked the wrong soldier to corner. I didn't sleep much that night. Instead, I read. I opened the company's internal database and started scrolling through every single policy update I'd signed off on over the years. Most people click agree and move on. I read every word. Around 2 a.m., buried somewhere between travel reimbursements and code of conduct revisions, I found it. Policy Amendment 18.4.2 Employee Protection and Conflict of Interest Protocols. Paragraph 12 hit me like a jolt of caffeine. When harassment claims involve employees over the age of 40 and reviewers with familial or hierarchical conflicts of interest, shared liability extends to all approving parties and executive leadership. In plain English, if HR mishandled a case to protect a relative of the CEO, the fallout wouldn't stop at my desk. It'd land on theirs. I cross-referenced the digital acknowledgement logs. Both Ashley and Patricia had signed that policy 2 months ago. Time-stamped. Immutable. For the first time in weeks, I felt the knot in my chest loosen just a little. I didn't have to win through politics. I could win through precision. The next few days I kept my routine. Smiled when I needed to. Let Ashley host her innovation syncs. She started skipping safety briefings altogether now. Too busy reimagining production culture, with color-coded sticky notes. Then she made the mistake that changed everything. It was a Tuesday afternoon. I was updating the production schedule in our Slack channel, nothing special, just routine logs for heat treatment batches. At 3:47 p.m., a notification pinged. Ashley Wellington reacted, thumbs up to your message. Harmless. Except attached to that emoji was a file upload. HR performance review. Confidential. t.morrison.pdf. For 3 days, that file sat wide open in the public channel. 47 employees could read it. And they did. Inside were Patricia's handwritten notes. Resistance patterns in older workforce members. Difficulties adapting to young leadership. Every line was a legal grenade. A documented admission of age bias. By the time someone realized the mistake and deleted it, I already had screenshots, metadata, and the audit log showing who accessed it. I added it all to the folder, now renamed Q4_review_backup, and stored a copy on a private drive at home. Still, I knew it wasn't enough to sit on evidence. In a company like Hudson, truth doesn't move unless the system makes it move. At 3:26 a.m. that Friday, while the plant lights buzzed and my neighborhood slept, I logged into Hudson's compliance portal. A digital maze 3 clicks deep that nobody but lawyers ever used. I uploaded the Slack screenshots, attached the time-stamped acknowledgement forms from Ashley and Patricia, and wrote a 3-line report. Age discrimination documentation publicly shared without authorization. Executive family conflict of interest present. Shared liability applicable per policy 18.4.2. No emotion. No plea. Just data and law. I hit submit. The portal confirmed. Compliance review initiated. Corporate counsel notified. No alarm sounded. No fireworks. Just silence. The kind of silence that hides inside systems until it decides to wake someone up at corporate headquarters 200 miles away. At 6:43 a.m., that someone was probably a lawyer staring at his phone, reading the words shared liability and executive relative, and realizing his weekend just died. By the time I showed up to work, the day looked normal. The factory hummed. Ashley breezed through the floor in designer flats, sipping an energy drink. But I knew better. Somewhere inside the company's digital bloodstream, a message was crawling its way to the top. That night, my phone buzzed. Patricia's assistant, polite, probably clueless, asked if I could meet Friday morning, 8:15 a.m., to discuss team dynamics. Conference room B? I asked. That's right, she said cheerfully. Perfect, I replied. I ended the call, turned off the kitchen light, and looked out at the dark street. They thought they'd built the trap, but the truth was already loaded into the system, ticking quietly toward them like a timed charge. Friday, 7:45 a.m. I was in the parking lot, watching the factory wake up through the windshield of my truck. Steam drifted from the vents above the assembly wing, the same way it had for 14 years. It should have been comforting. But that morning, it looked like smoke from a battlefield. I'd polished my boots the night before, pressed my shirt, and laid out my badge and notepad in perfect order. Not because I cared what Ashley or Patricia thought, but because I wanted to look like exactly what I was. A man who'd done everything right. At 8:12, I walked down the corridor toward conference room B. The hallway smelled of disinfectant and burnt coffee. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, flickering just enough to feel wrong. Patricia and Ashley were already inside, seated in the same places as before. Patricia had a stack of documents she wouldn't let me see. Ashley looked like she'd been coached. Softer makeup, neutral colors, a little too much effort to appear fragile. "Tom," Patricia greeted, smiling with her practiced corporate compassion. "Thank you for being flexible." "Of course," I said, closing the door behind me. The clock on the wall read 8:15 a.m. Ashley crossed one leg over the other, hands folded, a performance of composure. "Before we start," she began, "I just want to say I hope this can be a positive conversation." Positive. That's how HR talks right before they cut you loose. Patricia cleared her throat. "We've received ongoing concerns about communication patterns that could be perceived as creating a hostile work environment." There it was again, the same script, same phrasing, just rehearsed for the final act. Specifically, Patricia continued, "Comments and behaviors that may intimidate or diminish newer team members." Ashley leaned forward, looking straight at me, her voice tremulous enough to fool an audience that didn't know her. "It's been really difficult to establish myself, Tom. The way you correct me in meetings, it feels like you're trying to make me look incompetent." Patricia nodded sympathetically. "Making a colleague feel inferior based on background or experience can constitute harassment under our updated policies." There it was, the word harassment, the nuclear button of HR language. It didn't matter that it was baseless. Once it's spoken, it leaves residue. I studied Ashley for a moment. Her pupils dilated slightly when she said the word. Not guilt, anticipation. She thought she'd won. "Do you have specific examples?" I asked quietly. Patricia jumped in before Ashley could answer. "We'd prefer to keep this conversational," meaning they had nothing solid, just enough smoke to fill a report. I nodded slowly, feeling the familiar calm that comes right before a controlled burn. "So this isn't a review," I said. "It's a formality." Patricia's pen hesitated over her pad. "That's not how we'd frame it." "I bet." Ashley folded her arms. "Tom, this doesn't have to be adversarial." I leaned back in my chair. "You're right, it doesn't." Then, with deliberate precision, I pulled my badge from my pocket and placed it in the center of the table. It made a quiet, solid sound against the laminate. Patricia blinked. "Tom, we're not asking for your resignation." "I know," I said evenly. "I'm not resigning. I'm just marking this moment, the point where the truth started its own audit." Ashley frowned, confused. Patricia looked pale. "The truth?" she asked. I met her eyes. "The one your compliance department's already reviewing." Silence. The hum of the ventilation filled the room. Patricia's pen stopped moving. Ashley shifted in her seat. "What review?" Ashley asked. "You'll find out soon enough," I said. "I'd check your Slack uploads." The color drained from Patricia's face first, like a power failure in slow motion. She glanced at Ashley, who clearly had no idea what I meant, then back at me. "Tom," Patricia said, her voice suddenly tight. "I don't think this tone is productive." "Neither did I replied. "Until 3 days ago when I realized a confidential HR review about me sat in a public channel for 72 hours. Ashley blinked. "Wait, what?" "You attached it to a thumbs-up emoji," I said. 47 employees saw it. Every page with your notes about older workers and adaptation challenges. I made sure to document everything, even the digital signatures." Patricia's jaw tightened. "You reported this?" "I followed protocol," I said, smiling just slightly. "Policy Amendment 18.4.2, if I recall correctly. Shared liability clause." The silence in that room wasn't just awkward, it was structural. You could feel the foundation of their plan crack under its own weight. Ashley's confidence faltered. Tom, this feels retaliatory. Then it's mutual, I said. The clock ticked to 8:20. Patricia stood, trying to reassert control. We'll need to pause this meeting and consult with legal. I stood too, sliding my hands into my pockets. Good idea. As I turned toward the door, I heard Ashley whisper, "What did he do?" Patricia's voice dropped to a hiss. He didn't do anything. We did. Outside, the hallway was quiet. Through the glass windows, I could see the production floor running smooth, a heartbeat of machinery and competence that didn't care about office politics. By the time I reached the loading dock, my phone buzzed. It was Rodriguez. Legal team just arrived. 3 cars in the parking lot. I exhaled once, slow and steady. The system was doing exactly what it was designed to do, just never for people like me. While I drove home, I pictured the dominoes falling. Compliance alerts, internal emails, phone calls from corporate counsel. At 10:15 a.m., Ashley's badge would stop working. Security would call it a glitch. By 11:30, Patricia would be in a side office with HR representatives asking questions she couldn't answer. And by 2:45, James Wellington, the CEO and Ashley's uncle, would be canceling his golf game and calling an emergency meeting with legal. I didn't need to see it to know it was happening. Systems like this leave trails, not surprises. That night, I sat on my porch with a beer, the sky burning orange over the factory skyline. For the first time in months, I didn't feel hunted. Monday morning, the phone rang. "Tom," a gravelly voice said. "It's James Wellington. We need to talk." He didn't sound angry, just tired. We met Tuesday morning in his office, the one overlooking the plant floor I'd helped build from chaos into order. He looked older, paler, a man who'd just learned how expensive family loyalty can get. "Tom," he said, exhaling, "I owe you an apology. I didn't speak. What happened in that room was unacceptable," he continued. "Patricia has resigned. Ashley's been reassigned to corporate development. That's where they send people to write reports nobody reads until the contract expires." He rubbed his temples. "We're implementing new oversight protocols. I'd also like to offer you a consulting position, same pay, flexible hours. You deserve better than how this was handled." I looked out the window. Below, I could see the welders in their helmets, sparks flying in steady rhythm. Real work, the kind that keeps people alive. "I'll consider it," I said. He nodded. "Fair enough." When I walked out, the hum of the plant sounded different. Not louder, just clearer, like the noise had turned back into music. Every month now, I submit reports from home. No politics, no HR theater. Just data, process, results. And every time I hit send, I remember the look on Ashley's face when she realized she'd pulled the pin on her own grenade. Justice doesn't always need noise. Sometimes it just needs patience, documentation, and the quiet confidence that the truth, once set in motion, doesn't stop. Because the best revenge isn't loud. It's precise.